You've heard of the brave and ingenious rescue of Jews from the Nazis by Oskar Schindler, and the courageous and of the American hostages from Iran depicted in the movie Argo. But until we first reported it back in October, very few people had heard about the daring and dangerous rescue of the Vietnamese from Saigon by John Reardon. It happened nearly 40 years ago at the very end of the Vietnam War, when everyone was trying to escape the communist incursion. No one was paying attention to an unassuming American banker who had already been evacuated, going back in to save his stranded Vietnamese colleagues and their families. You got everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody worked at the bank, spouses and children.
Right.
There were 105 in all who John Reardon, risking his own life, rescued in the last days of the war. Even now, 4 decades later, when they see him, they know he's the reason they're alive. Today, they're leading prosperous lives as American citizens, with children who are doctors and lawyers, and with grandchildren.
Isabel, do you know my name? John Reardon, and you know my last name. That's more than I know.
John Reardon was as far from Rambo and Mission Impossible as you could get. Back in 1975, he was a young banker, handsome and unattached, working as the assistant manager of Citibank in Saigon. They gave you a villa.
They gave me a villa.
And you lived well.
I lived well, yes.
He hosted barbecues at the villa for the bank's 34 Vietnamese employees. Tellers, secretaries, accountants. They were like a family, tying their future to American banking. But that April, communist tanks were barreling toward Saigon. Hundreds of thousands were leaving or trying to. 3 weeks before Saigon fell, John got an order from Citibank in New York: burn everything important and get out.
They said, John, we've chartered a 7 Pan Am that's coming in, and we want you to take all of your staff and leave the bank and get out to this plane.
By this point, it dawns on you what would happen to those people if you didn't get them out?
Yeah, some of them would be killed.
It's scary. It was very scary.
Cook Van Vo worked in personnel. Chi Vu was the head teller. They were hearing rumors of by the Viet Cong against anyone working for the Americans. Would you have been seen as traitors, as spies?
The closer you to American, the more they think you spy.
But their own government set up checkpoints to keep people from leaving the country. Without exit papers, the staff had no way to escape. John didn't want to leave without them, but the bank ordered him out. So he boarded that Pan Am flight to Hong Kong alone, and the employees were left to fend for themselves. Did you feel abandoned?
Yes.
Did John say anything to you when he left?
I was crying so much. I was worried about my kids, my husband, and he said, "Don't worry, I'll be there for you."
John and his bosses at Citibank spent day and night in Hong Kong cooking up rescue plans. They tried to send in helicopters, even an oil tanker, and they asked the U.S. government to help, all in vain.
I felt we had all those people back in there, and they were counting on us. And many, many times in the conversations we had with them, they said to us, "Don't let us down. Please do everything you can."
But after 2 weeks of trying, Citibank said enough. A manager told the Hong Kong team, "If you try some daring rescue mission, you're fired." That night, John's immediate boss, Mike McTighe, a former Marine, asked John to dinner.
And just as my steak arrived, and I was picking up my knife and fork, and he's making small talk, and then suddenly he says, "You know, John, one of us has to go back." And I put down my knife and fork and pushed that steak back, and I could feel tears come out of my eyes. And he said, "Would you go back?"
Go back, even though it meant losing his job, possibly losing his life. And yet, 11 days before Saigon would fall, The mild-mannered banker defied his bank and better judgment, caught the very last commercial flight into Saigon, and walked into the branch.
And everybody comes running around me and said, what do we do? What do we do? How are we going to get out of here and everything?
But you're there under the authority of who? You're not working for Citibank anymore.
No one, on my own.
On his own authority, John moved them with their family, 105 of them, into his villa and another one nearby, so they'd all be ready to go as a group when and if he came up with a plan. He told them to tell no one where they were. 4 days went by. Nothing was working until a CIA agent told him the only way out now is on U.S. military cargo planes that are evacuating Americans and their dependents.
He says, the evacuation has begun. Take your family and go out to the airport and process them through. And I said, well, I don't have a family. And he said, just create a wife and children, no matter who they are, and go out there and sign the document.
And this is the first time you've heard this idea.
Yes.
Try and pass off his Vietnamese colleagues, their spouses and children as his family? There were 105 of them. Do you say to him, are you kidding me? You don't say cockamamie?
No. Because there's been so much cockamania before that. This is the time to jump on anything that looked like it was going to float.
You were at the end of your rope.
Yes, absolutely.
It was worth a try, but not for all of them at once. He took the bank van and went out to the airfield alone to see if it would work.
I walked into that processing area and somebody gave me a piece of paper and said, list your dependents on here. And I was fumbling for what piece of paper I was going to have to write this all down. They said, just attach that to this piece of paper and keep going. So
There
it was
were
a bit of a rush.
15 names. You had a wife and 14 names.
Right.